Okay, guys, we're gonna get started again. Let me shut the door. So we'll be doing English today, and what the plan is we're gonna go over a few grammar rules. So we're gonna talk about semicolons, dashes, apostrophes, and then colons, and then we'll take a practice test, and that should take up the entire time. So if you want to get out your notebooks, we're gonna be starting with English notes, and to start off we'll be talking about semicolons. So just like with the comma rules, there's also semicolon rules, so we're going to just talk about like two of them, two instances. They'll be used mainly on the ACT. So the first rule is that a semicolon separates two independent clauses when you don't see a fanboys. So remember, our fanboys was that acronym for those conjunctions, which is for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. So in contrast, a semicolon is actually separating those two independent clauses. And so I'll show you an example of what it looks like. So here's my example. It is a good thing that the test was easy, semicolon, he hadn't studied. So we've got our two independent clauses there being separated by a semicolon. If you'll notice, my second independent clause, our pronoun he, is not capitalized. It's not completely like a period where you capitalize the next sentence, but it's really similar. And actually, a lot of times on the ACT, a semicolon will be it can be used like interchangeably with a period. So if you have like an option and it says like choose which best way to punctuate this sentence, and there's a period option and there's a semicolon option, it's probably going to be neither of those because they can kind of be used interchangeably. If you notice, I could put a period here and say it is a good thing that the test was easy, done with that sentence, and then he hadn't studied. Those are two independent clauses. Okay, so that's our first rule. And then we'll talk about our second semicolon rule. Okay, so second rule is that if you see a themos or another conjunctive adverb between two independent phrases, you're gonna like hug it with a semicolon and a comma. So I'll kind of show you an example of how that looks. So here my sentence says, He loves watching basketball, semicolon, however, and then there's my comma, so that was like that kind of hug. He is not very good at playing it. So that's one example where I'd use that semicolon hug with a comma. And then however is one of our conjunctive adverbs that is in the acronym FAMOS. We talked about those a little bit when we started doing English notes, but we'll discuss our conjunctive adverbs again in a second. So that's our second example, or our second rule of how we would use semicolons on the ACT. So I'm going to erase this first rule, and then we'll talk about our FAMOS conjunctive adverbs. Okay, so you can see that. Okay, so the T in FAMOS stands for therefore. H was however. A is also. M is moreover. And O is otherwise. So these are the conjunctive adverbs that you'll see a lot on the ACT, probably most than some of the others. And then a quick tip I want to mention is that if you see the word therefore, what comes after, I'm going to have you think is a cause and effect. So when you see the word therefore in the ACT, think like cause and effects. There should be, sometimes they'll have you choose like the best transition phrase or conjunctive adverb to use. If the passage is talking about a cause and effect, then you're going to want to choose therefore. For however, if you see the word however, I'm going to want you to think about like contrast. Whatever came before is going to be like contrasting with what comes next, and that's the same with otherwise. Otherwise is also contrast. And then my militu, also, and moreover, those deal with continuation. So when you see the word also, when you see the word moreover, think about like continuing on or describing in more detail what you are already talking about. So those are all my FAMOS or conjunctive adverbs that deal with semicolons. And then, yeah, so these conjunctive adverbs usually come a lot after, you see them a lot after semicolons. In this example, like in that example where there was a semicolon, then we used the adverb however. Okay, and so I'm going to erase my examples. I know some of you guys like to see like the format of what it would look like. So it would be like for my second rule, it would be like an independent clause, then a semicolon, a FAMO, comma, and then my second independent clause. That would kind of be the format. And sorry, I also forgot to talk about the format for the first rule. I know I erased the first rule, but if you do want to write it down quick, what the first rule format looks like is independent clause, semicolon, and independent clause. So that's over the first rule that I erased. And then one more thing with our second rule, there are a couple of exceptions. So let me write this down quick. Okay, so with my second rule, the exceptions are that the words so and otherwise, they don't need a comma when coming after a semicolon. So those are kind of exceptions to that second rule that we just talked about. Okay, so that was it with semicolons. Now we're going to be talking about colons. just like a brief overview of like when we're going to use these. So what a colon does, and it looks like those two like dots, it follows an independent clause, and then it's going to introduce either an example, a short phrase, or a list. So I'll show you like the format for that. So let's say I have my sentence here, just like any sentence, and then I'm going to have my colons. What comes after is either a detail, list, or explanation. And then I'll end my sentence with a period. So let me show you an example of when we use, or an example of the colon being used. So I could say, so here's my example. My cousin has 3 cats, Molly, Tabby, and Cheeto. So what comes after my colon is a list, and it's a list of the 3 cats. Okay, does everyone have this down? Because we're going to move on to dashes. So I'll just reset. Okay. So next we're going to be talking about dashes. And so this is kind of like a long explanation, but okay, so we use dashes to kind of like hug a major break or interruption in thought. And so the dashes are similar to our comma hugs. They kind of go around like that non-essential phrase in the sentence, or like in the definition says an interruption in thought. And so with the ACT, you're always going to want to have one on both sides. So I'm going to show you the format of dashes. We have our first dash, our starting dash, and then after that is a complete sentence / non-essential clause, and then after that we have our ending dash. There are instances where you use a dash, and then instead of having an ending dash, you'll just like complete the sentence, so it'd be a period here instead. But usually they don't do that on the ACT. They'll have a starting dash and then an ending dash, so kind of like that dash hug. So for the most part, there will be 2 dashes. If you see one dash, you'll see another dash on the ACT. And so then I'll write my example sentence over here. So It was a big day, dash. She was taking her finals, dash, and she was nervous. So that phrase, she was taking her finals, it's kind of like non-essential to the sentence. You could take it out and say, it was a big day and she was nervous. So because we're adding that in there, we're going to want to put that like dash hug around it. It's like an interruption in thought or like a major break. And so in my example, I have one on both sides, which is what you'll usually see on the ACT. Okay, so last grammar rule we're going to talk about is with our apostrophes. And so you guys likely already know these, but we're just going to touch on them. Okay, I think I spelled that right. Yes. Okay, so first rule with apostrophes is that an apostrophe indicates possession. So when you see an apostrophe, you're usually going to be talking about like something a person is owning or that belongs to someone. And so I'll kind of show you like the format with these. But if you see like a singular word or noun, I guess, and you're showing possession with that noun, it's going to be the singular word and then apostrophe S. And then so with our plural nouns or people, whoever, it's going to be the plural word with an S and then the apostrophe. So the apostrophe comes after the S when we're dealing with plural possession. And then it comes before the S when we're dealing with singular possession. So that's kind of like what the format would look like. And I'll show you guys a couple of examples. So here's a singular noun. Dad's grilling is my favorite. Because dad is just one person, it's going to be singular, so apostrophe S, and then the grilling kind of like belongs to dad. Dad's the one grilling. So dad's grilling is my favorite. That's a singular example, and then I'll show you a plural one. So my second sentence is, my parents' favorite place in the world is the Grand Canyon. So the favorite place in the world is like belonging to the parents. And so since there's two parents, it's a plural noun, then the apostrophe is going to go after the S in that example. So that's my first rule with apostrophes. And then our second rule, you guys likely know this one too, but it's that an apostrophe indicates a contraction. So I'm sure you guys know what contractions are, but I'm just going to write a couple of examples of some that you may see on the ACT, and then they're like translations. Okay, so the contraction, it's, which is IT apostrophe S, that translates to it is. Then we've got theirs with apostrophe S, so that translates to there is. Your, which is Y-O-U apostrophe R-E, that translates to you are. Whose, with apostrophe S, is who is, and then there down at the bottom with an apostrophe R-E, that translates to they are. So those are just like some common contractions that you've likely seen, but you might see those on the ACT, so we just went over them. Okay, So that was it for notes. What we're going to do next is take a practice test. So I'll address that later. Okay, so we're going to be using our red ACT books, the ACT 10 official. And I'm going to have you guys turn to page 350. Okay, so this is practice test 2. We've started the practice test, I think, in some other classes, but we're going to keep working on it. We're going to do, and so usually in class, we'll just do like one passage in 9 minutes because that's like the rough timeline I want you guys to work on. But today, since we have time, we're actually going to be doing 2 passages, and I'll give you double the time. So instead of 9 minutes, we'll give you 18 minutes, and you're going to do passage 3 and 4. You guys haven't taken those passages, right? No? Okay. So page 350 on the red ACT book, 18 minutes, passages 3 and 4. And so basically what you'll be doing is answering questions 31 through 60. Do you guys have any questions about that? No? Okay, so let me show you what my timer sounds like. I think it's like that. Okay, hold on. Okay, sounds like this. That's the sound at the end of 18 minutes. That'll let you know when to stop. And then once we finish, we'll go over the answers. So if there are no questions, we will, if you guys are ready, I'll set the timer and then we'll start. Okay, so your time starts now. 3 and 4. Okay, so that's time. Hopefully you guys are finished. But yeah, so we'll go over the answers. So you should have done 31 through 60, which was 30 questions. And then I'll read out the answers. So 31 is B. 32 is F. 33 is A. 34 is F. 35 is D. 36 is H. 37 is B. 38 is J. 39 is C. 40 is H. 41 is B. 42 is J. 43 is C. 44 is G. 45 is C. 46 is J. 47 is C. 48 is F. 49 is A. 50 is G. 51 is B. 52 is J. 53 is A. 54 is G. 55 is B. 56 is J. 57 is C. 58 is F. 59 is C. And 60 is F. Any of those need to be repeated? No? Okay. Well then, do you guys have any questions over those? 31 through 60?
Do 44.
44. Okay, so 44 was the passage 3, I think. 3? Okay. Yeah, about the Bahamas. And so 44 is asking which choice most effectively suggests the shape of blue holes as described earlier in this essay. So if you look closely at the question, it's asking which choice most effectively suggests the shape. So we should be looking at shape. If you look at our answer choices, F for no change, it would say hundreds of blue holes can be sighted. So that's not really telling us anything about the shape. Answer choice G, which is correct, it says that they dot the waters. So when you think of a dot, that's like a circle-looking shape. So that kind of helps describe the shape. The other ones, H and J, darken and appear, those aren't really describing a shape either. So that's why G is the best answer for that one.
43.
43. Okay. So 43 says, okay, choose which option. And that has to deal with the punctuation. So 43, the correct answer is C, that we should say alligators now extinct on the islands with no punctuation in there. For answer choice A. Okay. So for answer choice A, what they did, no change, so they put a period after alligators and kind of separated those two into two sentences. So divers have found the remains of turtles and alligators. That is a complete sentence, like an independent clause. But if you read the next one, now extinct on the islands, stalactites and stalagmites from a time when the caves were above sea level and artifacts of early human inhabitants. So that's going to be like a fragment or a dependent clause. It's not a complete sentence, so we can't separate those two with a period. And it's the same thing with answer choice B and D, where they're splitting those two up wouldn't make two complete sentences. So that's why we're going to have to use answer choice C, which keeps them two together.
39 was C, right?
Yeah, 39 is C.
Can you do 33 and 34?
33 and 34. Okay. So, 33, the correct answer is A, no change. So they want you to say, these grains built up, then compacted, forming the limestone that makes up the islands. Okay, so the YA is the correct answer for 33 is it has to deal with like verb tense. We talked about this with our English notes, but once you start like in one tense in the passage, the whole entire passage has to be in that same like tense. So what's happening in that sentence is, okay, if you go to the sentence before, they say during the formation process, tiny grains of calcium carbonate separated from the water. And then next they're saying these grains built up. So they're talking about past tense. The grains aren't building up, or they aren't like going to build up, but they actually did build up. Those past tense. And then they compacted. So that's why it would have to be A, because we need to deal with that past verb tense. That kind of answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, and then 34 you said?
Yeah.
Okay, so 34, the correct answer choice is F, which is no change. I'll read the entire sentence. Over time, rainwater permeated the porous limestone, but was trapped just below the sea level, buoyed by the denser seawater below. So the reason that they said it wasn't G, H, or J is because it's like unnecessarily wordy, and if you use any of those options, it would like sound awkward, kind of. So what I would do is like plug in those other answer choices into my sentence. So I would read like answer choice G. I'd read the entire sentence using that in place. And so if you use any of those other options, they're kind of like too wordy, or they're not. It's just worded weirdly. And so that's not what we really want for these, for the ACT. We want it to be like concise and clear. That's kind of what the deal is, to be like clear and concise with our answer choices. So it's not going to be any of the other ones except for F. Okay, any other questions? All right, well, if there are no other questions, then that's where we're going to end today. So we're going to stop there. It's like 5:55. We're going to end there today. Thanks for coming, everyone, and I'll see you next week. You can stay on the Zoom if you have a question you want to ask me later, but I will,